Today I wanted to delve into a very simple but essential point, which is what is spirituality? What is really the heart or the essence of spirituality? So there are infinite paths to spiritual awakening and spiritual discovery. And of course, we have endless ideas about what spirituality is, right? We have religions across the world and all sorts of methods of meditation and all sorts of styles of practice and devotion. And we have thousands and thousands of years in all different cultures built up, even into the fabric of our societies, the fabric of our governments, of our beliefs about everything. Religion and stemming from spiritual belief and practice is embedded into the fabric of our everyday lives, whether we realize it or not. These paths of spirituality, which became religious institutions, which became, power structures that were very much related to governance and the formation of our societies in the most fundamental sense. That spiritual underpinning is kind of everywhere. But that's not really spiritual, right? Spirituality is not anything. Spirituality is nothing, in a sense. So in a lot of Eastern traditions, there is a focus on negation in coming into spiritual experience. So in Buddhism, there's a lot of focus on nothing is lasting, nothing is permanent, everything is ephemeral, and you are not this, you are not that. So look at your body, you are not that. Look at your ideas, you are not those. Look at the beliefs that you have, you are not those. In Taoism, there's a line in the Tao Te Ching, the way that can be named is not the eternal way. Right? The Tao that can be Taoed, so the Tao is like the divine, you could say in Western language, the Tao is kind of like the divine. So the divine that can be divined, the Tao that can be named, basically, is not the eternal Tao. And even in Western traditions, in Abrahamic traditions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, there is also something called apophatic theology, which is coming to divine understanding through negations, through realizing what God is not, what the divine is not. So there is a heavy cataphatic focus in the West. Cataphatic is the inverse. It's what God is. So mostly in Western society, we have a sense of what the divine is, right? We have images of maybe saints, if we're in a Christian or especially Catholic tradition. We have, all sorts of symbolism, and it's very, we talk about God as an entity, so it's very sort of form-oriented in a way in the West. That's the way that we come to it. We talk about, love and peace and these ideals that are things. And in the East, that focus on things as a path to the divine, on images and all of that is less front and center, because the focus is on stripping away, realizing this is not it, this is not it. But that's also there in the West, in especially monastic contemplation of the divine, and in theology, some more involved theology. That apophatic dimension does come in a lot. And even in Islam, right, you can't portray Allah, right? You can't make images of the divine because it's like sacrilegious, right? You can't. Allah is greater always than any image that we can create of Allah. You can't portray Allah. You can't portray the divine. So this is very important, because if we really understand what this means, it's the end of all the fighting about religion. It starts to become the end of clashing worldviews in so many different ways. The deepest truth of what you are is nothing. There is no thing. You may have a method of meditating. You may have a religious path that you're following, and that's awesome, and that can be a wonderful vehicle for awakening. But if you come to start to mistake that path or that method for the reality itself, you're missing the point entirely. So we could say if you have a map, right, the map here is the religious path or the method that you're following or engaged in to come to awakening. If you have this map that's bringing you or pointing you to this place, but you start to believe that the map is itself the place, that the map is itself the sacred object. That's not true. It is just a piece of paper. It is just a map. It's just pointing the way. All that matters is that you take that path, that you move in that way. And frankly, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of maps that will bring you into awakening. There are thousands of religious structures, spiritual methods, non-religious spiritual methods and practice. And some people just have deep spiritual experience and awakening without any religious context. It's spontaneous. Life might serve you up a few disasters that force you into some deeper experience that may bring you spontaneously to some deep self-experience. So don't confuse the map for the destination. And when we talk about spiritual awakening, we have to realize that we're talking about nothing. I don't mean that in a negative sense of there's nothing to find. That's not what I mean. But I mean that the spiritual experience that we're really looking toward is so much deeper than anything that we can conceive of. It has nothing to do with our thoughts about it. It can't. If spirituality were really about some idea, if it were directly related to some version of spiritual practice, that would make spirituality a very small thing. It can't be that any particular religious path is the path, or God becomes very small. The divine, if you want to call it that, if you want to use the word God, it has to be greater, deeper, broader than any of our specific understandings of it if it embraces all of us and every single path that we can envision and come up with. So this deep self-experience, this deep spiritual experience, and again, even my words are just words. They're not the right words. They're just practical signposts, words to point in a direction of inward experience. None of these words ultimately matter. They're just here to point you to some self-experience that you can find looking within. But that deep self-experience is broader than any ideas that we can come up with about it. So I use the word consciousness a lot. And that word, for now, is a relatively neutral word. At this time in the world, if you say, look into consciousness, it has a semi-spiritual ring to it now because of a lot of New Age thought. But it also has a sort of scientific meaning as just your mode of perception, your experience of perception. So it has a sort of neutrality still, unless you're tired of New Age language. Maybe then consciousness sounds a little woo-woo. But if you haven't been in a hippie commune for too long and you're not tired of that, then consciousness is still pretty neutral. But even that word, in 500 years or 1,000 years, if humans make it that long, and these New Age movements have become, historical events, just like any religious tradition, consciousness may be this word that now has so much attached to it as the word God does. It may become a new loaded word that confuses people. So don't pay attention to any of the words. The words are just the surface. They have nothing to do with the deep self-experience. They just point to it. That experience is something that you have to find for yourself. You have to experience inwardly for yourself. And it's no thing. All of these methods and words can serve you to come into it. But they're just surface objects. They have nothing to do with this deep self-experience. And this deep self-experience is not foreign to you. It is just what you are. It's nothing that someone else told you to do that comes from somewhere else. It is the most natural thing to you. It's just looking into you. It's not something other than what you already are. So just consider that and remember that as you engage in spiritual practice and move into this inward path, that you're coming into something that's you in such a basic way. And it's also paradoxically so universal. It's everybody's self. It's so natural. It's not something that you have to try to be or put on. It's not something that's going to come from a method or come from a doctrine outside of you. Those things can point the way, but they're just pointing the way into what you are. So let spiritual awakening be a natural experience for you. Let it be authentic and easy in the sense that it feels genuine to you.